Well, hey, is this Christian Hannah horror, man? That's far out, dude. When's he gonna do Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2? It's really the best sequel. What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Christian Hannah Horror here today with another episode of Surviving the Sequels, and we're talking about one of my favorite horror movies on the planet, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, 1986. Now, when I was starting this series, there was a couple movies that I knew I had to talk about. There were certain movies I've never reviewed before, and there are certain movies I've never really just dove into, and when I started this series, this was the one I had to do. And I wanted to test the waters with the series first, that's why I haven't done this one yet, but today is the day we're talking about one of the greatest freaking 80s horror movies ever made, in my opinion, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, and I'm going to give you guys 5 reasons why you absolutely must watch this movie. Let's go. Reason number 1 is Toby Hooper. You know, Toby Hooper came back to direct his sequel. I kind of equate Halloween 2 and Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 a little bit together. They got similarities. They both started out as great 70s horror movies, and then the sequels were in the 80s. Blood and guts were aplenty by this time, and one thing I liked is that Toby Hooper came back and embraced it, even more so than I think John Carpenter did. While John didn't direct his Halloween 2, Toby came back and did his Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, and knew what had to be done for it to be a good 80s flick. Toby Hooper was not scared to push the boundaries way more than it was in the first Texas Chainsaw Massacre. The comedy had to be there, the gore had to be there, and Toby was well aware of that and still knew how he could make it a good Texas Chainsaw Massacre film, because at the end of the day, this movie feels immediately like a Texas Chainsaw Massacre film, point blank period. It doesn't feel like a cash grab, it doesn't feel like a lousy film just made for the name. It definitely feels like it belongs in the Texas Chainsaw family, and that's all because of Toby Hooper. He wrote this thing, he directed this thing, he did the work, he put in the effort, and Toby Hooper came out shining with Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. I'll go on record and say it is, to me, the best sequel from the original and the entire franchise. Although there's a lot of good ones, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 is the best sequel, and that's all because of Toby Hooper, in my opinion. The second reason you guys need to watch Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, to me, is because of the blood and the guts. Look, this is the mid-1980s. Blood and guts were what drove people to the theater. Toby Hooper said, let's do this, and let's do it right, so he enlisted none other than the great Tom Savini. So when you get to the opening sequence of this movie, when they got the kids driving down the bridge, they're drunk driving, they're on the phone, and then all of a sudden they play chicken with this truck, which was the worst mistake they could have ever made. You know, Leatherface comes out at this point, going backwards in the truck, and then he cuts the guy's head off while they're driving. You want to talk about an epic scene in horror movie lore? This scene is it. When this guy's head gets cut off, it screams Tom Savini. It's crude, it's nasty, but it's so beautiful at the same time. This movie has incredible gore in it, especially at the end when LJ is completely skinned. It's just horrifying. But throughout this movie, there's other parts that just really exemplify 80s horror and gore, and that's why I love Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. It's not the first film. It's Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. It's not trying to be anything else, and that's what's so beautiful about it. When you're ready to see the Blood and Guts edition in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre franchise, look no further than Part 2, because it will deliver 100%. Next. The third reason you guys need to watch this movie is because of Bill Mosley. Look, here's the deal. This is Bill Mosley's film. Sure, it's all about Leatherface. Sure, it's all about the chainsaw. Sure, it's all about the story, the family. But the introduction of Bill Mosley's Chop Top is the absolute star of this movie. Whenever he comes on screen, it's golden. When you see him going to the radio station to go stalk Stretch, that sequence with him and her, and she's giving him the tour, is brilliant. I mean, Bill Mosley just shows that he can be a comedic horror character like nobody's business. I think he's a big reason why Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 is such a beloved horror movie, is because of his performance of Chop Top. We're still talking about him. There's NECA figures about him now. He's a legend. Bill Mosley's career was really founded upon this role of Chop Top. It was so great. When I watch this movie, my favorite parts have to do with Bill Mosley's character of Chop Top. It's absolutely hilarious, and you love seeing him on screen. But he's still a threat. That's what's so great about it. He's creepy, he's atmospheric, and you just kind of lean back every time you see him on screen because you don't trust Chop Top whatsoever. So that's the third reason for watching this movie, guys, is Bill Mosley as Chop Top. Next. Fourth reason you guys need to watch this movie is the great Dennis Hopper. Rest in peace to the great Dennis Hopper. This is a part of the movie that I've really grown to appreciate over the years. You know, when I was younger, Dennis Hopper's character in this movie just was kind of like, okay, we've got to have this kind of protagonist in this movie. Yeah, it's cool, but let's see Leatherface, let's see Chop Top. But as I've gotten older, I've really began to appreciate what Dennis Hopper was able to bring to this movie. Dennis Hopper's a character now that I can identify with. He's trying to avenge this evil. Then you learn that he was related to Franklin in the first movie, so that kind of ties things together, and it's cool. And one thing I like about Dennis Hopper is he's a bad son of a gun. He's not scared of anything. He's chasing the evil. He's chasing the horror. And then the scene where he's going to buy the chainsaws is probably one of the most hilarious scenes in horror movie history. He walks in all methodical, starts grabbing chainsaws, he's stretching them out with his hands. Me and my buddy Baldy Jack, we joke about the scene all the time when we're talking. We just think it's the funniest thing we've ever seen. He knows how to have that light element of comedy to his character, but still being played straight. It's an acting trait that you don't see pulled off correctly a lot, but Dennis Hopper does it, and he's a very much appreciated part of this movie to me now. If there's one element that I'm so glad that Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 has, it's Dennis Hopper, and you're not going to see this kind of element in any of the movies after this. He's one of a kind, and that's another thing that makes Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 so special, is the certain elements that are not in the other movies whatsoever. Dennis Hopper's character is brilliant in this movie, and he's so much fun to watch, so that's my fourth reason. The fifth reason you guys need to watch Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 is it's absolutely just a perfect blend of 80s horror and comedy. You know, my buddy Tommy thought that Return of the Living Dead was another example of the perfect blend of horror and comedy, and I agree. And if there's another movie that does that just as good or perfectly, it's Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. This was a movie that as you're younger, you'll be more scared of, but as you get older, you see nothing but the humor, but an appreciation for. It's not something that's perfected often. You can only think of a couple movies that are able to do that, like Return of the Living Dead, but Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 is right there and does it on the same level. This is a movie that you just get everything you want from. You get the horror, you get the comedy, you get the blood, you get the guts, you get the good characters. This is a perfect movie to me. I really don't think there's anything wrong with Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. It seems to be like a really big fan favorite, and for a lot of good reasons. So Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 is a perfect film in my opinion. I wouldn't change a thing about it. So there you go, guys. That's 5 reasons you need to check out Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. Toby Hooper, blood and guts, Dennis Hopper, Bill Mosley, the list goes on. I could really make a top 100 reasons you need to watch Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, but we'd be here all day. So please, guys, let me know what you think about this movie below. I need to know. I gotta know the allegiance for this film, and if anybody likes this movie more than the original, I really wouldn't be surprised. Also, please be sure to like this video if you enjoy it, and drop a comment below. I've also launched my Teespring. I've got Christian Hannah Horror shirts available there. I'll be sure to leave a link down below in the description for you guys to check that out. As always, this is Christian Hannah Horror. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye.